Lots of people know Kowloon Walled City from one thing: the movie Bloodsport. Dark alleys, illegal fights, crime. A place that looked less like a city and more like the end of civilization. Exactly what most people imagine happens when there is no government. Chaos, violence, lawlessness. Around 35,000 people lived surprisingly ordinary lives. They woke up, went to work, visited doctors, sent children to school, owned apartments, collected rent, opened restaurants, built factories, even inherited property. For decades, this wasn't just one of the most densely populated places on Earth. It was one of history's strangest economic experiments. A city where the institutions we associate with government appeared anyway. Not because someone designed them, but because ordinary people needed them. Which raises a question: if governments create civilization, how did this city function without one? To understand Kowloon, ignore the buildings for a moment, because cities don't begin with buildings, they begin with people. Imagine arriving here after World War II. You own almost nothing, no apartment, no income, no security, no official waiting to help. What do? You don't debate political philosophy, you start acting. Looking for shelter, food, work, anything that improves your situation. That's where praxeology begins. Human act purposefully. Every action replacing a less satisfactory situation with a better one. Nobody arrived trying to build a city. One family built a room, another opened a shop, someone repaired bicycles, someone cooked. Thousands of uncoordinated decisions slowly produced not just buildings, but an economy. Society doesn't begin with government. It begins the moment individuals start pursuing better lives. Ironically, Kowloon wasn't created because someone wanted less government. It existed because two governments couldn't agree who should govern it. Originally, a small Chinese military fort. When Britain expanded Hong Kong, this tiny enclave stayed legally ambitious. China claimed sovereignty. Britain controlled everything around it. And for decades neither fully exercised authority. It wasn't complete anarchy, but it wasn't a normal city either. That uncertainty produced something rare. A place where ordinary people had to solve everyday problems themselves. Not because they believed in self-government, but because waiting for politicians wasn't an option. Now imagine you finally found a place to live. Who owns it? Surprisingly, someone does. A big myth about Kowloon is that property didn't exist. It absolutely did. People bought, sold and inherited apartments, collected rents, expanded buildings, made improvements, invested their savings. Why? Because ownership creates incentives. If you own a small apartment, would you fix the leaking roof? Improve the building? Probably, because every improvement raises the value of something that's yours. Now imagine nobody respected ownership and anyone could move in tomorrow. Would you still renovate? Probably not. Investment depends on the expectation that you'll enjoy the benefits. Property isn't just a legal concept, it's an economic institution that makes people think beyond today. Of course, the legal situation wasn't always clear. Many buildings were never formally approved. Ownership wasn't documented like in modern cities, but something more important happened. The residents themselves recognized ownership. They respected rental agreements, accepted sales, passed homes to the next generation. Property worked because society treated it as real, not because a bureaucrat constantly enforced it. Governments can strengthen, standardize, protect and register property. But Kowloon shows something deeper. Long before government's perfect institutions, people often begin creating them themselves, because doing so makes cooperation possible, and cooperation creates wealth. Property changes something fundamental. Once people own resources, they stop asking, "How do I survive?" and start asking, "How do I improve my situation?" That single question creates entrepreneurship. Own one small room you could just live it in, or turn it into something more valuable. A noodle shop, a repair workshop, a bakery, a dental clinic, a toy factory. Inside Kowloon, thousands of entrepreneurs looked at the same concrete rooms and saw completely different opportunities. There was no department of economic development calculated demand. They simply noticed, my neighbors need something. If I provide it better than anyone else, I earn money. Entrepreneurs don't create demand, they discover it. Mises described profit as the reward for successfully anticipating what other people value. Kowloon became one enormous discovery process. Every staircase an experiment, every success and every failure revealing information. Take something as ordinary as lunch. Two restaurants open on the same street. Neither knows the perfect price or exactly what customers prefer, so they experiment. One charges too much, customer leave. Another serves poor food, people stop coming. One improves the recipe, another works faster, another lowers prices, another offers larger portions. Nobody planned this, nobody calculated the correct answer beforehand. Profit and loss become signals. Success says, you've created value. Loss says, resources could be used better somewhere else. Every transaction becomes information, and slowly, without anyone directing it, the city continuously reorganized itself. As businesses multiplied, something even more powerful emerged. Specialization. Think about your own life. You probably don't grow your own food, build your own house, make your own clothes, or repair your own electronics. Why? Because specialization makes everyone more productive. Kowloon showed this perfectly. One workshop made plastic toys, another produced fish balls, another assembled electrical components, another repaired watches. One dentist treated patients every day. Every procedure made him better, attracting more customers. His patients benefited. He benefited. Society benefited. Nobody ordered this specialization. It emerged naturally because focusing on one task creates more value than trying to do everything yourself. This is the division of labor, one of the oldest and most powerful forces in economics. But specialization creates a problem. If everyone produces something different, how does anyone get everything else they need? The answer is exchange. The dentist doesn't need to become a fisherman. The fisherman doesn't need to become a tailor. Each specialized, each trades, and both become wealthier than if they'd tried to produce everything alone. Notice what's happened. Nobody designed the city. Nobody designed the economy. One institution simply creates another. People acted. Action created property. Property created entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship created specialization. And specialization required exchange. Civilization wasn't imposed, it emerged. And yet, exchange only works if people believe tomorrow's agreements will still matter. If nobody trusts anyone, markets collapse. So how did people build trust in one of the most crowded places on Earth? By now, Kowloon had become remarkable. Thousands of strangers had to turn into a functioning economy. But markets require something even more valuable than money: trust. Imagine looking for a dentist. No online reviews, no government rating, no official inspection on the wall. So what do? You ask your neighbors, relatives, co-workers. Inside, Kowloon reputation spread incredibly fast because people constantly interacted. One dishonest business could lose an entire neighborhood. A good restaurant could stay full for years. A skilled electrician was recommended again and again. Trust became an economic asset. Future income depended on present behavior. Without realizing it, the people of Kowloon created one of the most powerful institutions any economy can possess: social capital. Trust solved problems no regulation ever could. Many businesses extended informal credit. Customers paid later. Suppliers delivered before receiving payment. Entire relationships depended on one expectation: that tomorrow both sides would still honor today's agreement. And notice, none of this required perfect people. People weren't suddenly more honest. The incentives simply changed. Breaking your word became expensive. Keeping your word became profitable. The market rewarded reliability, not because people became saints, but because cooperation created more wealth than constant conflict. Of course, Kowloon wasn't a paradise. Crime existed. The triads operated there. Most documentaries stop here and conclude: without government, criminals take over. But economics asks a better question. Why did the triads emerge at all? Because one human demand never disappears: security. Every economy needs someone to protect property, resolve disputes, collect debts, enforce agreements. When governments do it, we barely notice. But when those services become uncertain, other organizations appear. Some legitimate, some not. The triads fit part of that vacuum, sometimes through voluntary agreements, often through intimidation, sometimes through violence. They offered governance, but shaped by completely different incentives. A normal business profits by satisfying customers. A criminal organization can also profit through coercion. Yet even the triads depended on order. Restaurants don't pay protection if they close. Factories don't earn during constant violence. Owners can't collect rent if residents flee. Even criminal business needs predictable commerce. Chaos is bad for business. So the real question isn't whether order exists. It's who provides it and what incentives shape them. Now the biggest mystery. If so much order existed, why did Kowloon look like complete chaos? Because not every coordination problem is the same. Running a restaurant needs local knowledge. Running a whole city's infrastructure needs coordination on a completely different scale. Imagine owning a small apartment building. Demand for housing keeps rising. Another floor means more rent, so you build one. Your neighbor reaches the same conclusion, so does everyone else. Each individual decision makes perfect sense, but together, those perfectly rational decisions create something nobody intended. Buildings grow until sunlight disappears. Pipes follow whatever path remains. Cables stretch through narrow corridors. Airflow vanishes, not because people want an ugly city, but because thousands of rational decisions interacted without anyone coordinating the whole. This is perhaps Hayek's greatest insight. Complex social outcomes often emerge without anyone intending them. Sometimes beautifully, sometimes imperfectly, always through human action. Political uncertainty made it even more complicated. Britain tolerated the city. China claimed sovereignty. Neither wanted an international incident. The result was decades of hesitation, and during that time, the residents kept solving everyday problems themselves. Not because politics disappeared, but because everyday life couldn't wait for politics. Today, Kowloon no longer exists. It was demolished in the early 90s. And a quiet park stands in its place. But the questions remain. Some look at Kowloon and conclude governments are unnecessary. Others see only crime and conclude civilization collapses without the state. Both miss the deeper lesson. Kowloon was never simply a city without government. It revealed how much order humans naturally create just by pursuing better lives. Action created property. Property created entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship created specialization. Specialization created exchange. Exchange created trust. Trust created institutions. And where demand for government remained, new organizations emerged to provide it. Some peacefully, others violently. Civilization didn't begin with politicians. It began with ordinary people solving ordinary problems. Society isn't first built from above, it grows from below. One decision, one exchange, one act of cooperation at a time. Because before there are governments, there are always people. And wherever people act, institutions begin to emerge.